Hello, and welcome to our webinar today. We have the pleasure of welcoming Stefanie Blain-Moraes with us today. Stefanie is the inventor of Biomusic, biomedical engineer and an associate professor at the School of Physical and Occupational Therapy at McGill University. She is the Canada Research Chair in Consciousness and Personhood Technologies and the recipient of McGill University's Principals Prize for Outstanding Emerging Researcher. Stefanie also has her ARCT in piano performance from the Royal Conservatory of Music and combines her love of music with her expertise in physiological signal analysis in her biomusic technology. Welcome, Stefanie, and I am looking very forward to hearing about biomusic.
I apologize. My internet connection is a little bit choppy. I think I caught the end of your introduction and you're muted now, Kate. So I'm assuming that that was the signal to go ahead. And I'm hoping that I am still continuous at this point. Thank you very much. So I'll start by just loading my screen, and while that's loading, I'll start with a thank you to both Kate and Leigh for bringing me into the ALS Quebec and inviting me to present here today. I'm excited to engage with this group. I have a lot to learn from you. I hope that I have something a little bit to offer you today. I'm going to be presenting in English today, but I'm happy to receive questions in English or in French as you're comfortable. So, as Kate mentioned, I'm a professor at McGill University. My background is as a biomedical engineer, but I have a deep love of music, and this will influence my work and in assistive technologies, as you'll see in the course of this presentation. I run the Biosignal Interaction and Personhood Technology Lab, which is in Montreal. We're located in the Montreal General Hospital, which is at the top, very top of Montreal. And broadly, what our lab does is it applies physiological signal processing techniques and assistive technology design principles for non-communicative individuals and their caregivers. And I'll get into what all of that means throughout this presentation. So we have three main areas of the work that we do in our lab. I have a whole group that researches human consciousness. When you have someone who is non-communicative, for whatever reason, one of the big questions you ask is, are they present? Are they there? Is there someone to communicate with? And so we have a whole series of projects that work looking at the human brain and the signals that it gives when you're awake, when you're under anesthesia, when you're sleeping, when you have a big brain injury, to determine if you're having a subjective experience or not. Once we know that there's someone in there that we want to communicate with, then we have to build some assistive technology to communicate with someone who isn't able to move or speak. This is where biomusic comes in, and this will be the focus of my presentation today. I also have an arm of research that looks at human personhood, the understanding that someone else is interactionally available and can be attributed the status of being a person. And across all of the different conditions I look at, whether it be someone with a disorder of consciousness or someone with advanced dementia or a child born with severe congenital disabilities, we find that if you aren't able to interact, you're at risk of loss of personhood. So this theme weaves throughout my research. There's two main objectives to my work. One of them is just on a scientific level to advance our neurophysiological and physiological understanding of human consciousness and human interaction, and then to take that understanding and turn it into technologies that improve the quality of life of people who can't communicate in traditional ways and their caregivers. This is a really multidisciplinary work. We work with, in my lab, I have neuroscientists, I have biomedical engineers, computer scientists, anthropologists, in order to observe what's happening in the field, just the everyday lives of people who are minimally communicative and their families. We work with philosophers and we partner a lot with clinicians. Most of my work has been while I've been here in Montreal has been with individuals in disorders of consciousness and with dementia. But my first encounter with building technologies for minimally communicative individuals was actually with ALS. This is work that I did over 10 years ago down at the University of Michigan. And I had gone down there for 2 years for a postdoctoral fellowship, um, thinking that I was going to build brain-computer interfaces for people with ALS. So for those of you who haven't seen brain-computer interfaces before, what happens is we put a set of electrodes on your head to be able to record signals directly from your brain. There's two different ways that it works. On the brain-computer interface on the left, there's a screen that's flashing different letters. You look at the letter that you want, and when you see the letter that you want, your brain gives a signal. It's called the P300, but colloquially we call it the aha signal, and your brain says, aha, that's the letter I'm looking at. We record that signal and then you can type on the screen. So in this video, the letters are flashing on the left screen and the letter that is being selected is being output on the screen on the right. There's other forms of brain-computer interfaces. The one on the right is a sensory motor rhythm brain-computer interface, an SMR brain-computer interface. This is a video of me using the SMR brain-computer interface. The way that it works is that it detects the sensory motor rhythm, which is above your motor cortex. It has a high amplitude when you're at rest, and it has a low amplitude. Oh, this video has sound. At any rate, I'll speak over it. The sensory motor rhythm decreases when you're moving or when you're thinking of moving. So here I'm controlling this little blue guy in the maze. I'm thinking of moving, and that's making this blue guy move to the right. And then I relax and the blue guy's moving to the left. So just by my thoughts alone, I'm able to move this. This is a training maze. So this is the cursor on the screen, left and right. This is a level up where if you get stuck too hard on one side or the other, there's fire and you burn up. So there's extra incentive for you to move your guy left or right. I found that it backfired a little bit. I got really stressed when my blue guy got stuck in the fire and I wasn't able to focus and concentrate. But I think it's obvious to everyone on this call how something like a brain-computer interface could be useful for someone living with ALS. So as part of my my postdoctoral fellowship, I connected with, I believe it was 12 caregivers and 12 individuals with ALS who were living near Ann Arbor, Michigan. We brought them into the university. We gave them an hour-and-a-half demonstration of what a brain-computer interface was, how to set it up, how to put the electrode cap on, how to use it, the training involved. And then we held a focus group about what everyone thought. And just out of curiosity, because we've got a lot of expertise on this call, I'm just going to ask you to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down about whether you think that they thought that this was a good idea. The brain-computer interface was a useful thumbs up. Thumbs up. Kate's not so sure. Kate now has a thumbs up. Lay, thumbs up. Okay, interesting. That's what I thought too. Sorry, I'm scrolling down. I missed the thumbs up. Geneviève, Veronique. Yes, but so I thought this has got lots and lots of potential. The focus group showed otherwise. So when we went and we showed people what this actually would be and what the practicalities of using it would be, here's some of the responses that we got. I don't know, I just wonder what my stamina would be like. I personally wonder how long I'd be able to do that. I have doubts that I'd be able to do it for like over an hour or so at a time. And I agree with this. Even as someone who doesn't struggle with fatigue, after half an hour of using this, I was tired. I'm daunted by the process and very, very concerned about my own ability to trash the whole thing, and all of this is beyond my capacity to do well, I feel. How can this be made accessible to the computer illiterate or the technologically illiterate, inexperienced, my generation of people, who still remember spark plugs? And I understand this. It's very complicated, this technology. It looks like it. Like there's lots of moving pieces, a big amplifier. I understand this quote very well. I would like to see it easier to use and not the goop in your hair. This is referring to the gel that you need to make the electrode have good contact with your skull so that you can read brain signals. I can't think of washing my hair every day. Unfortunately, without the gel, you don't get good brain signals, and then the brain computer interface doesn't work. So it is this electrode paste that goes underneath all of the electrodes, or implanted electrodes, which requires a surgery. If it made, and that is what this quote is referring to. We were talking about the difference between like a electrode cap or implanted electrodes, and one of our participants said if it made it easier on the caretaker, in the sense that they didn't have to wash her hair every day, then they'd go with the implants. We talked about what they would want to use the brain computer interface for, and whether they wanted to spell things or whether they wanted to be able to select icons, and that people talked about wanting both. Sometimes we wanted to pour our hearts out in 3-letter words, and sometimes we just need to go to the bathroom. And then the last quote, I love this quote. Someone said, I really don't need this brain computer interface. The person I want to communicate most with is my wife, and after 58 years of marriage, she knows what I'm going to say anyway. So why would I go through all this trouble, essentially? So this was a really interesting moment for me, just interfacing with the ALS community here. This very, very sophisticated technology that really literally takes signals from your brain and translate it into output on the computer without needing any sort of motor output. It got it. I mean, I would say overall a lukewarm reception. Some people were like, maybe you have to do some improvements, but maybe. And some people were thought, I can't be bothered with this. So I didn't give up with my quest for assistive technologies, but I did pull back from the complication of a brain-computer interface, and I started developing a new technology called Biomusic, which is what the rest of this presentation is going to be about. And I prefaced it with speaking about brain-computer interfaces, so you do realize first that other technology exists and is out there that uses physiological signals as the basis of communication, but also just to give you a sense of some of the parameters that we've started to see that have emerged as important for these technologies to be useful in the everyday lives of people that we're designing them for. So Biomusic, I conceive it as an assistive technology that's designed for the relationship between a minimally communicative person and their caregiver. It's a relational technology. It's not a technology necessarily for like an individual. I really perceive its value as in connecting two individuals. And I'll explain through like for the rest of the presentation what I mean here. There's 4 components to the Biomusic system. The first part of Biomusic has a sensor that records signals from the autonomic nervous system. The second part of Biomusic detects moments that are significant on the basis of changes in that physiology. Then those significant moments get classified through a machine learning algorithm. We can classify emotional states, we can classify the activity that the individual is doing, and finally that classification gets turned into real-time musical output. That's the overview of how this technology works. So let's dive deeper into each of these different sections. The first section, recording the physiological signals. When I talk about the autonomic nervous system, I'm talking about, so this is divided into your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. These are the systems that are involved in mostly involuntary functions inside your body. They coordinate a lot of your flight or fight responses. So you'll see examples on this picture on the left about what it innervates. Your heart beats faster based on your autonomic nervous system. The sweat in your skin increases or decreases. Your pupils dilate or contract. I've spent many years during my PhD looking at how 3 autonomic nervous system signals in particular changed with emotional state. So I looked at electrodermal activity, the amount of sweat in your skin that's not related to keeping you cool, but it's emotional sweating that appears in your skin, your heart rate, and your skin temperature. You'll notice if any of you have, I don't know if any of you have taken a polygraph, but you'll notice that it's the same signals that are used in a polygraph, in a lie detector. And there's a reason for this. These signals are the ones that change according to your emotional state, your stress levels. So when you tell a lie, unless you're trained to defeat a lie detector, your body tends to get more stressed. And by looking at your autonomic nervous system signals, you can often tell whether someone is lying or not. So the electrodermal activity, the skin conductance, when you watch movies that have a lie detector in them and you ask the person a question and there's this pencil going across the page and there's a spike, that's a spike in your electrodermal activity that happens through the stress of telling a lie. These three signals are also signals that will change according to your emotional state. So think about what happens when you get angry. Everyone's body reacts differently to emotion. My hands get cold. My heart goes faster, but I know some people who get really hot when they're angry. Everyone has their own different emotional signature. But you can start think about when you're nervous, like there is a signature of that emotion inside your body. And these are the signals that we are recording. How are we recording them? We've tried a number of different sensors. We played around with a watch for a while, but we realized because one of the most important signals was the amount of sweat in your skin, we needed to record off of a place where your sweat glands were densely packed, which was either on your palm or on your fingers. And so right now in my research group, we're using this sensor that fits on the tip of your index finger. It's got two electrodes, one that fits on the one tip and the one that fits on the middle phalange, and we secure it with different types of gentle, stretchy fabric. This is the hardware, and it records those three signals: electrodermal activity, skin temperature, and blood volume pulse, which we translate into heart rate. It sends it via Bluetooth to an app that we've designed for Biomusic. I will apologize in advance of pulling up the slide. I recognize that this app is in need of a makeover. This is a very techie app. This is what it currently looks like, and it will be made over. But the signals get sent to this app, and we can see the signals, we can classify the signals, and the app will generate the rest of the detection of the moments of significance, the classification, and the musical output. So that's the recording section of Biomusic. The second part of Biomusic is the detecting moments of significance. When we created the algorithms for detection, one of the things that we realized quickly was that every individual has their own unique pattern of physiological responsiveness. How do we program an app to detect a significant reaction when my significant reaction might show up as a strong drop in my skin temperature and your significant reaction might show up as an acceleration in your heart rate? We ran a number of studies in order to answer this question. What you're looking at here are pictures from a study that we ran with a group of individuals with dementia who were participating in a movement program. Each of them wore the physiological sensor on their finger that you saw in the previous slide, and they engaged with either individual movements with the music or partnered movements. They were encouraged to move together. I have a couple of great examples here in the bottom left, which is sort of like this partner dance this group dance that emerged between the three, and then this beautiful partner dance that emerged between one of our dancers and one of our participants with dementia. We looked after these sessions at their physiological signals, ran them through an algorithm like a recipe that detected whether there was a major change in any one of the signals, and marked in the physiology moments that we thought there was a significant change. So the red boxes here with the asterisks, these are moments where we think that something significant happened, either because there were bumps in the electrodermal activity or changes in the skin temperature or changes in the heart rate. These are where we think something significant happened. We used these moments to synchronize with a video that we were using to record the whole session. And we would ask the participants immediately after the session, the participants and their caregivers, we would clip the video according to that moment and say, what was happening at this point in the session? Was it in relation to you? Was it in relation to your partner? Did this moment stand out of the flow of the ordinary session? Were there moments that we did or did not feel as a sense of connection to your partner? And we were able to use their feedback to tell us that this first moment, for example, really was a significant moment because they watched the video of what was associated with that moment and they said, yes, absolutely. I found so much connection with my partner there. We were really engaged. And then we would show them the video of the second moment, for example, and they would say, I have no idea why I'm looking at this moment. Nothing was happening here. And so here we were able to start using their feedback to sift through, okay, the electrodermal activity absolutely marks it, but the changes in the skin temperatures, those weren't marking anything. And we were able to tailor the specific physiological signature to that particular individual. Another way that we've detected moments that are significant is by looking not just at the individual, but at pairs of individuals. We were looking at something called interpersonal synchrony. So this is just a fancy way of saying when our physiology synchronizes with another person's physiology. The examples that you're seeing here are in skin conductance. But I think that the more intuitive example is when heartbeats synchronize, when you're really in tune with someone else and your heartbeats start going together. That's an example of interpersonal synchrony. So we were looking for moments of interpersonal synchrony in this example of individuals moving together. And we found that if we looked at the electrodermal activity, we could detect moments where two people moving together, their bodies would connect. And so once again, these are moments that we want to be able to pull out and highlight as moments of significance. The third step of biomusic, once we've detected, here are the moments in your physiology that we want to pay attention to, then we have to ask, what does this mean? What are these moments about? What are they telling us about the individual? Here, the work has been driven a lot by an exhibit that I have at the Centre de Sciences de Montréal. There's an exhibition that's been there for the past 7 years actually now, entitled Mes émotions sont à fleur de peau. And it is this exhibit in the human exhibition. You can look for this hexagon, this pink hexagon, and go inside and you'll find a table with the sensor for biomusic embedded in it. When you sit down at the table, you're presented with a number of different emotional videos. We had to choose them carefully because this is a children's public exhibition and we couldn't push the emotion too far without it being inappropriate. But we found some that tended to evoke reasonably strong emotions, and we record your physiology while you're watching these videos. We then ask you at the end of the videos to rate how you're feeling. How did you feel and how intense were you feeling this? Right now, we have over 40,000 participants who have given us their data through participating in this exhibit at the Montreal Science Centre. And we are building machine learning classifiers, both with shallow learning and with deep learning, to be able to detect emotional state from patterns of changes in physiological signals. Biomusic also is able to detect not just emotional changes, but activity changes. So we have a separate project that I don't have slides for that look at changes in the state of an individual with dementia. Here they are holding hands with their husband, watching a show that they both really like. We don't necessarily have the emotion associated with it because the individual with dementia wasn't able to tell us how she was feeling, but we knew what she was doing. And we could take a guess at how she was feeling. Here was the physiological signals when she's sitting at the table and someone is pushing a spoon against her lips and she's keeping her lips closed. And we don't know how she's feeling, but the physiology has changed and we understand the context. And so we are also able to detect states like that. Finally, once we've developed our classifier, then the last step of biomusic is to generate the music. So we create a real-time musical output that is tailored to the musical needs of the person who is wearing the biomusic sensor and the person who's going to be listening to the biomusic. It's interesting that individuals identify with the music that is coming out of the system. And we learned early on that the music needed to match the individual. Otherwise, they didn't want to use it at all. So we worked at one point with adolescents with advanced autism, and the original music that I had put into biomusic, because I'm trained as a classical musician, I had very classical based music in biomusic, and they said, "Oh, no, 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 that's not how our bodies sound." And I said, "Well, how do your bodies sound?" And they created all sorts of different representations of their body through sound that I would never have chosen. They represented it by sounds on the STM metro. They could tell the different types of metros that were coming by and the years that the metros were built. Sounds on the train, for example, that they could perceive and they were really paying attention to, that represented their body. One of them represented their music, the sounds of their body with sounds from their cat. So the cat's purr increasing or decreasing, representing their changes in their heart rate, and meows, different types of meows. She knew what the cat's meows meant, and she mapped them onto different classification outputs of her own biomusic. So I give that as an example of the fact that the music also needs to be tailored to match the individual, not just the physiology. So I'm going to walk through in a little bit of detail about how we create this music. And I'm giving you an example from a mom and her son who was in a pediatric palliative care setting here in Montreal. We interviewed the mom about her relationship with her son, and it was a beautiful description of this bond between the two of them. And as we were listening to her describe her relationship with her son, I thought, oh, this is absolutely a love duet. This needs to be represented by a love duet. And so we gave the mom one sensor and we gave her son the other sensor, and we wanted the music to represent both the boys' reactions, the mom's reactions, but also their combined reactions. When they were both synchronizing and they were both interacting with each other, we wanted both voices to come in. So the way that I designed this particular output, I had a piano that kind of gave us a continuous 8-bar chord structure. This boy was represented through the sound of a cello, and the mum was represented through the sound of the flute. I had taken the music from the latest Cyrano movie, where there's a balcony scene as Cyrano is singing up to Roxanne in the balcony. It's beautiful, and I had turned that. What you're seeing on the right is my sort of transcription, listening to the song of the male and the female voice into the cello and the flute part. We controlled the tempo of the music based on the boy's heart rate. It would slow down and speed up based on whether the boy's heart was fast or slow. The temperature of the boy controlled whether we were in the verse of the song or the refrain of the song. And then the mum and the boy's reaction controlled the melody that was played. So once all of these decisions were made and mapped to the physiology, we then recorded these outputs. This is me on the flute in the studio. This is one of my friends, Alex, on the cello, playing through each of these parts. We recorded each of them separately. I'll give you a sense of what this sounds like. So that is like one section that would play when the boy had a particular reaction. We mapped it. This is not to overwhelm, this is just to give you a sense of, we take all of these little pieces of music, we match them with the appropriate physiology in this particular program. And whenever the boy has a particular reaction or the mom has a particular reaction, the right piece of music plays. We tried this out with the boy and the mum, and it was a beautiful, beautiful duet. Sometimes the cello would play, sometimes the flute would play. And when they were together and engaged, the two instruments came together in harmony with each other. So I've done some research on whether or not this is an effective assistive technology. I talked at the beginning about it being an assistive technology for relationship, for communication, for interaction. And this is what we wanted to investigate, whether it allowed you to, an individual to connect, to interact better with someone who didn't have traditional speech or movement communication. So the first study that we did was about a decade ago. This was an early prototype of Biomusic. And we tested it with 3 children in complex continuing care. We asked their caregivers to interact with these 3 individuals across 4 different biomusic sessions. We interviewed them before, during, and after. During these sessions, we said, just engage with the person wearing biomusic as you normally would. We had nurses, we had parents, we had therapeutic recreationists, we had child life specialists. We said, engage with them as you normally would. The one difference is that their body is going to be sonified. You're going to hear how their body is reacting. They're going to do it 4 times so they get used to the sound of that particular individual's body. And then we interviewed them about what the effect of listening to the biomusic was. So the first thing that we noticed was that having the biomusic there changed how caregivers interacted with the individual. There was some representation of reaction, and the caregivers noticed it, and it changed what they were doing. They would engage with the patients. They would, for example, read a book. The music would change, and they would say, "Oh, do you want to change to the other book?" Or they would try to interpret. They would change what they were doing if they noticed the music changing. The second thing was that it changed the way that they perceived the non-communicative individuals. So a couple of quotes here that I wanted to share with you. This is from a father of a 13-year-old boy who had just been in a traumatic accident. He said that for the biomusic, the sound keeps on. It feels like my son still exists. And the second quote is from a nurse who had been working in complex continuing care with this particular individual for 10 years. And it's a long quote, but I'll read it out in full because I think it's important. It's almost like she was trying to relate to you through her music, to us. But I'm thinking that was unique. Like we forget as caregivers that, we just kind of not look at the person and just do what we have to do. This makes us step back and actually think about, okay, so this is a person. She may be dreaming, she may be having some sort of thought, she's not able to verbalize, but there are other ways she could probably give back to us. And I love that phrase in the middle, okay, so this is a person. The fact that it's not just, and for this nurse, not just a body in a bed that needs custodial care. There's someone in there who's having reactions, and the music makes her realize this. I think that that's incredibly powerful. We're also currently working right now with Le Phare, which is a pediatric palliative care center here in Montreal, looking at the effectiveness of biomusic on mother-child diets. We invited fathers too, but it's typically the mothers who are participating in the study. And across the individuals, this is an example of one of the boys' biomusic. And as we are starting to receive feedback about the effect of this music, we're getting very, very enthusiastic responses from the community, from the participants. Merci encore pour cette belle opportunité que vous m'avez donnée de communiquer avec mon coco. Like, it's I think that there's a lot of people who have recognized the potential of this technology. What I'm excited about, especially with the invitation from Kate and Leigh, is to look at opportunities to interface biomusic with ALS. So I'm going to sort of switch gears now that I've let you know what biomusic is about. I want to give you a sense of what I would propose in interfacing this particular assistive technology with the ALS community here in Quebec. We are currently working on a study that engages individuals who are minimally communicative with our particular assistive technology. I'll give you the overview of what the study involves. So we are looking for individuals who are on the edge of losing intentional, reliable communication. We find that if you still have speech, if you still are able to make yourself well understood, biomusic isn't the right technology for you. It's too vague, it's too abstract. If you still have a reliable yes no, but you're struggling to communicate other things, or if you've lost your reliable yes no, this is where the gap, where the technology we find is most effective. So we're looking for individuals who are on the lower end of the communication abilities. And we're looking for individuals who don't have any conditions that would prevent us from recording the physiological signals that we're interested in. So we need a good contact between the electrodes and your fingers, essentially. If you have any conditions that don't let us get that signal, then biomusic, we can't get the data that we need in order to make the technology go. Once we've consented our participants, we're looking for both a non-communicative or minimally communicative individual and one of their caregivers who is used to interacting with them. We're looking for someone who has an established relationship, so someone who interacts with them about 3 times a week at least. We will come and visit you at a place of your convenience, something that works for whether it's in your home or a place that you go that you're comfortable. And in the first session, we'll get just some basic demographic data. We do an opening interview just to understand what you want from a technology like this, to understand what your musical preferences are, so that we can tailor the music to match what you want. And then we'll do a baseline biomusic recording. This time you won't hear the music because it's not tailored to match you at this point. We just want to get a sense of what your physiology looks like. And we're trying to get 5 minutes of you in a relaxed, calm state, and then 5 minutes of you in an active state, in the sense that you are engaged in something or you're mentally stressed. I ask my students to think about exams. That's probably not the right cue for this group that we're recruiting from, but something that will stress you out and change your physiology. Or maybe think of someone that you love that will change your physiology. But we want the contrast. We want the contrast between what your body looks like when you're at rest and what your body looks like when it's engaged. We will go away and we will customize the software, and we're customizing it on 2 fronts. First, we need it to match your physiology. We need it to match what your body does, your particular signature of your body. And then the second thing is we needed to match your musical preferences. We have a number of pre-designed what we call sonificators at this point. We have a jazz-based sonificator, a classical music-based sonificator. Soon we're having a Super Mario's-based sonificator. But and if one of our pre-existing sounds works, fantastic. Here we go. We're ready to go. But we find that people have very particular musical tastes, musical preferences, and we do our best to match that. Once we've tailored biomusic to match your body and your musical preferences, we'll come back and we'll have an experience. And this is up to you what you want this to be. Sometimes in the case of Le Phare, the parents were interested in a memory making experience. In the case of our individuals with dementia, they were interested in using it to detect certain moments of agitation. So this needs to be decided in advance, but we want to be able to have you interact in a meaningful way with your caregiver, someone around you, and look at how the presence of biomusic is able to facilitate that or not. We don't know. This is part of our question. Is this helpful? How do you imagine that this technology might be helpful? And let's test it in that situation. Is it helpful as you expected it to be? We'll interview you to ask what was useful about the technology, what your what your preferences were, how you would like to see it changed. And we'll either provide you with compensation for like financial compensation for participating in our study, or if you're interested, we can customize a little music box with your biomusic in it and send that to you so that you have a recording of your own biomusic in this particular interaction experience for you to keep and for your loved ones to keep. So this is how I'm excited to move forward with this technology with ALS Quebec. If anyone is interested in participating, first I will share the details of the study with Leigh and with Kate, and I'll ask them to send it out through their networks. But you can also contact us directly. My master's student, Naomi, is going to be driving this work. I'll put her contact information, it's on the screen right now, but we'll also disseminate it through the ALS Quebec network. And I'm excited to engage with different ideas and different ways that you think that this technology might be useful just in the daily lives of people with ALS in Quebec. So I'll open it up for questions. I also want to just take a moment before I take questions to thank the sources of funding that allow me to conduct this sort of work. I get funding from a lot of agencies from the Canadian government, and then all of my students who do the nitty gritty of the everyday work. I get to be here and present the overall big ideas for you, but they're the ones that are in the lab, writing the code, making the detection software. None of this would be possible without them. So I'm going to stop my screen share at this point, and open up the floor for questions, comments, suggestions, any sort of feedback that anyone on the call might have. Hi, Naomi.
Thank you so very much, Stefanie. This is really, really fascinating, interesting. I think all of us are kind of going, oh my God, this kind of blows our mind. Yes, my colleagues are all going, yes. Lee, do you have a question?
So something stuck with me, Stefanie, when you said that it's that, or when you talked about it being in, about the relationship, and so it sounded to me like a relational soundtrack in a sense. I was just wondering if, I don't know if this is too far ahead or something you've looked at already, but you mentioned the music being relevant to the person who's minimally communicative. Does the music also resonate with the caregiver? I wonder if there was like something that I don't know if it's easy to coordinate two sets of interests, but I wonder if, you know, if someone gets mad, does, like, for the sake of dramatic effect, do we go bum 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 and then the caregiver goes, oh no, they're angry, or if there's something that you know, if the music triggers some sort of, you know, I don't know, beautiful emotion in them that they might be even more likely to react in to their person living with minimal communication. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does, and I realize in Kate addressing you, I've been calling you Leigh. I'm sorry, Lee. Yes.
Yes.
I apologize, Lee. So I think that there's two parts to your question here. So the first one is about whether the music is tailored to like the minimally communicative individual or to the caregiver, and that can be tricky, right? There's, you know, there can be two entirely different sets of musical tastes there. And when you have someone who's someone who's minimally communicative, often we default to the caregiver. So we were working in CHSLD with an individual with advanced dementia who was completely non-communicative, and his wife was the one who chose his music. And she said, you know, he was a jazz musician. He used to play jazz on the radio all the time. So you need to make a jazz soundtrack for him. And we thought, well, that's interesting. Like she associates him with jazz, absolutely, but is he tired of jazz music at this point, or does he identify with jazz music? Like what's going on? But you know, we had to go with because we didn't have any other input, we had to go with what the caregiver had asked there. The second part of your question that I'm pulling out there is this question of feedback, positive feedback, and whether there's a positive feedback loop. I have done biomusic presentations wearing biomusic before, and I'm not doing it now for a reason. When you can have this positive feedback, as you alluded to, Lee, where let's say you're stressed, or let's say hypothetically that someone is giving a presentation in front of a large classroom, and one of the people in the classroom says, "I'd like to ask you a question." And the presenter at the front of the room, who happens to be wearing biomusic, starts going with the music because their body is stressed and the music is giving them away. That makes me more stressed. And in that particular situation, I got embarrassed and it got even more loud. And then the audience laughed. And then there was this terrible, I had to turn it off because it got so high and so piercing that I was like, this is too much. There's too much insight here into my state of emotion. Enough, I'm not presenting with this anymore. So there are different ways of matching the music and the physiological stage. What we have here, like what I've been describing, is a match between the emotion, and then let's find the music that represents the emotion. But you can and we have done the opposite, where if you have a stressed state being detected, we deliberately match that with music to calm you down, like sort of a like to like close, like to I wouldn't say close the feedback loop, but to negate the emotion that is happening. So we detect a moment of stress and we play calming music so that you try to become not stressed. I had a group of students who were working on developing biomusic in the really like heavy lockdown days of the COVID-19 pandemic, and this is what they used it for. They said, we're so anxious, we're so stressed, we need something to calm us down. They were doom scrolling and they were wearing biomusic, and then the music would start to play and they were like, oh, I'm stressed, my music is trying to calm me down, it's time to turn off the news at this point. So I think it's customizable as you want it to be.
So neat, thank you.
Does anybody else have a question at this point? I think for all of us, it really is something that we had not kind of anticipated. I think it's really, really interesting. I can see how this would be very exciting to think about maybe using this with an ALS population with somebody who has lost their ability to communicate, even if it's just to be able to assure that somebody is in an okay place emotively, etc. So I really look forward to seeing what's going to happen later on with your research and how far you can take this. Does anybody have a last word to share with Stefanie before we end this webinar? No? Then I would like to thank you truly for this very interesting and informative presentation on a subject that I had no idea even existed prior to being in touch with you. So on behalf of everybody at ALS Quebec, Stefanie, thank you for your presentation, and we look forward to collaborating with you in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to speak to all of you.
Thank you. Have a great, lovely day, everybody.